My name is Sharon Palmer. I'm the branch manager at the Kingsway Library. Today is Friday, November 7th, 2014, and I'm sitting with Kay Goldstein at the Kingsway Library in the Sheepshead Bay neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. This interview is part of the Brooklyn Public Library's Our Streets, Our Stories oral project. So Kay, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to be interviewed today.
My pleasure.
Okay, so let's start. Can you tell me, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Borough Park.
Okay, can you tell me your parents' names?
My father's name was Murray Kaplan, and my mother's name was Claire, C-L-A-R-E. Her maiden name was Shaw, S-H-A-W, Kaplan, Claire Shaw Kaplan. And my father was born in Brooklyn, and my mother was born on the Lower East Side.
Can you tell me what were their occupations?
My father was a furrier. He made fur coats. He had first he worked for somebody for several years, and then he had his own business. And when I was growing up, I had a lot of nice furs from him. And this is funny, I just thought of it. I remember he had made me a lovely charcoal beaver coat. And then at some point, he was going to remodel it. So he took it apart. I said, well, now I can't wear it at all. And he said to me, oh, that's nothing. As soon as I get a chance, I'll fix it for you. We'll redo it, and it'll fit you better. Styles change and all. He said, I'm always here to take care of it. But he lived a certain amount of years, and then he was gone. And if I go down to my basement, I see a lot of fur projects that are half done. He thought he would be around forever, and I thought he would be around forever.
Did he pass away at an
He
early age?
passed away, yes. At a nice age, 85.
Okay. Oh, but
Yes.
he never got around to finishing the projects.
Yes, but he never got around to finish it. And I have little fur projects in different places, and every time a style comes in, and I see it in the paper, I say, oh, I could do something with that. But my youth was, I wore fur coats at a young age, because he always made them for me and for my sister and my mother.
Did you learn the skill as well, how to make fur coats?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not my talent.
Now, what about your mother?
My mother did work for him occasionally. She would come in. Yes, she would come in on days where he had people coming in. In other words, if a woman was coming in to buy a fur coat, she would come in to be the salesperson. And sometimes she would hang around there for a while or go there during the week. In those years, she really didn't have a career. In her later years, she went to a local high school, the Utrecht High School, where I had gone and my sister and my brother had gone. She went to the Utrecht High School, and she worked as a school aide for several years until they retired and went to Florida. My father sold the business, and then they went to Florida.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, Kay, that you had a brother and a sister.
Yes.
Did you have any other siblings?
No.
Can you tell me the name of your brother and sister?
My brother's name is Steve Kaplan, and my sister's name is Joan Kaplan Levine.
Now, I want to continue talking about growing up. Can you tell me what role, if any, did the library play in your life?
Oh, absolutely so important. We got our love of books from my father. He loved reading, and we loved we went to the library on a regular basis. In fact, he was coming home from work one day, and it must have been the warm weather because the days were still light, and he looked. The subway was an elevated subway, 18th Avenue. It was called the Culver Line. And at 18th Avenue, before he got off, he happened to look out the window, and he saw me and my sister walking either to the library or from the library with books. And he started to laugh because when he came down the steps, he just about met us. Oh, Daddy's here. That was excitement. But that was such an important part of our life, taking books out of the library and reading. All three of us, major readers. And my mother became a reader in her really later years. She says, it's fun to read. She didn't in the early years. She was too busy socializing. She wanted to talk. This way, with reading, it's a solitary activity for a while. It's wonderful.
Now, you mentioned something about the subway line being called the Culver Line?
Culver Line. That was the, yeah. But and 18th Avenue was the station. It was sort of, I think they call it, I don't know, a sideline. That it was outdoors, and when it came into a station, I think it was, I don't remember the Sea Beach or the West End. Those were the trains that followed through, but this was the Culver Line. That's what we called it, the Culver Line.
Do you recall what was the price of a subway ticket years ago?
I know. I don't even think, I don't remember. I think it was before tokens. I think you probably, I don't know. I don't remember. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's all right.
Very little, no doubt.
Can you tell me about the schools you went to? You mentioned you went to New Utrecht High School. What about the elementary school?
The elementary school, I went to PS 192. That's on 18th Avenue and between 47th and 48th. It's a few blocks from the subway. The subway was 18th Avenue and McDonald's. And this was about 3 or 4 blocks west.
Can you tell me about any of your teachers? Do you recall any of your teachers? What are some of the memorable things that you remember about your teacher?
They were all women. I don't think there was a man teacher in the
This is
school.
an elementary and high school as well?
Elementary. No,
elementary.
This is elementary. My first 6 years, it was 6 years, 7th grade, we went to junior high. It was all women. In fact, the first principal, there were 2 women principals. The first principal was an older woman, and so was the second. But they were both, no men. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a man teacher until I got to junior high. I remember talking with my friends, there's men teachers.
Which junior high school did you go to?
Montauk Junior High School. That was on 42nd Street and 16th Avenue, I think. That was a newer building. The public school was an old building.
And then you went to New Utrecht High School.
And then I went to New Utrecht High School.
So I'm sure that there were male teachers in New Utrecht High
Oh,
School?
yes. There were several in the junior high, but nothing like the high school. The high school had a lot of male teachers. But by then I was used to it. It was, commonplace. Each time, though, that I moved, I don't mean that I moved, that I went further in school, it was further from my home. PS 192 was a few blocks, walking distance. Then the junior high was walking, but not too far, but more than the elementary. And then high school had to take a bus. There was a special bus, a neighborhood bus, or city bus. And New Utrecht, everybody who came from my junior high did not go to New Utrecht. Everybody, half of them went to Erasmus because they lived in a different section. So half went to Erasmus and half went to New Utrecht. I did want to go to Erasmus because I thought, and people said, Erasmus was a better school. And it really didn't work out. I had to go to New Utrecht, and I went, and it was fine. And I was on the boosters, which was like a fun thing, something, I remember the name. I did well in school, and I knew I was going to go to Brooklyn College. In those years, I didn't think about going away to school. I remember saying to my father, what if I don't make Brooklyn College? You'll make it. That was his answer to everything.
So everybody went to Brooklyn College?
Everybody went, except unless they wanted, because they were free city. Brooklyn was free.
Oh, Brooklyn was free then?
Free, a free city school. But you had to take a test,
Okay.
and your average, and a lot of kids couldn't make it. Some kids went to, I don't know what it's called, a community college, a 2-year college. But most of them went to Brooklyn. Some wanted to travel. They wanted to make new friends and see new people. So some went to Queens College, a few, very few. Some went to Hunter, some went to City College, and then even fewer. I worked in the dean's office when I was in high school, and I remember seeing the records of the people who were going to private schools out of New York, and they were making I saw their applications, and it was different. All my friends who went to college, went to Brooklyn College. There were kids who didn't go to college then.
Well, let me ask you, so back then, all the city colleges that you mentioned, like
All free.
All were free?
All free. NYU you paid tuition. Everything else was free. Totally free.
That's certainly changed now. No, you pay tuition for them.
Right.
That's a big difference. What were your subjects that you really liked when you were in like high school? And
I think I liked history. I liked English. In high school, I took a drama class. I liked that very much. I was in a show on the stage. I didn't have a big part of it. I had a little part, and I liked it. I found it very exciting.
what was the production called?
I don't remember. But it wasn't the kind, like if I came home and I said I was in a show, I want to be an actress, my father would say, you'll be a teacher, and that's it.
So at Brooklyn College, did you study general subjects?
Oh, the first, I don't know, there was a core curriculum. It was either in the first year or 2 years. I don't remember if it was a year or two. And it might have been 2 years. The courses were very, very difficult. That I do remember. And it was a very comprehensive education. There were courses that I never would have taken on my own. Philosophy, classical civilization, courses of that caliber. I took advanced French because I had taken French in high school. I had taken Spanish and French in high school, but I continued with French. And years later, my husband and I traveled to Europe, and we went to Paris, and I was his guide because he had never studied any French. So I was his guide. I took him around with my well, it was college French, but I was just reading, it's good for your mind to learn a new language. I was thinking of starting up with French again because I don't really remember anything.
I'm sure it will come right back. Yeah, definitely.
It would be nice, something to do that's different.
Okay, so Kay, I want to take you back a little bit to childhood. What did you and your friends do for fun?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. Vivian's house had a big lot. Vivian was the friend from when I was 3.
Okay.
And we lived for the first, I would say, maybe 10 years of my life. We lived next door to Vivian, separated by a big lot. And that lot was where we all played outside. We were constantly playing outside. And then I'm trying to, what did we play? We went to the movies. Oh, this you'll be interested in. I remember once going to the movies, and it was very inexpensive. We paid children's price. I don't know what it was, a nickel, a dime, a quarter. It was something very small. And one of the girls on the block, who was about 3 or 4 years older than us, her mother was a friend of your mother, and she had a problem mentally. I don't know what they called it then, but we all knew it. So if we played with her, it was different than she was part of the regular group. But anyway, we used to go to the movies on Saturday morning, and she went to the movies with Vivian and with me and with another friend, Sally, who lived on the block. And when we got to the movies, let's say we were paying 10 cents, they wouldn't let her pay 10 cents. She had to pay a quarter because they considered her an adult. She was a few years older than us. She was womanish looking compared to we looked like little girls. We were 8 to 10 years old. And Vivian had extra money. Vivian always traveled with extra money. So Vivian, her name was Edith, the other woman. Vivian paid it, and it was a quarter. And that was a subject of interest for us, that they wouldn't let her in, and the price and the whole thing, and that's how cheap, inexpensive things were.
Now you met Vivian when you were 3 years old?
3.
Oh,
and we were friends all. Well, I had a second friend, Rhoda, who I met when I was 6. And I'm still friendly with Rhoda today. Same thing with Vivian. And there was another friend, Sally, who's she was younger than us. So she was younger. She wasn't in the same grade in school. And there's one other, Sandra, who came into the neighborhood. She was a new friend. She came in at about 12 or 13. I am still friendly with, in fact, Sandra and Rhoda are coming over next week. We're having lunch together. I'm the middle for both of them. One comes from New Jersey and one comes from out on the island. So maybe twice a year we meet for lunch, just the girls.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic that you've maintained a friendship
yes.
from childhood and throughout.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
You don't really get people doing that, maintaining these bonds of friendship.
I have another friend who I met in high school. Also a friend. I don't see her that much now, but I did maintain that friendship for many, many years. And I feel as if I'll call her now.
Wonderful.
Yes.
What else did you and your friends do besides go to the movies?
Okay, we went to the library. Sometimes we would go together. We played games outside. Hide and go seek was a big one. We played marbles in the street. Sometimes as we got older, we would go into each other's houses and, like come from school, and one of the friends, Sally's mother, used to bake, and we would come and we would have cake and milk, and then we would sit around talking. We did a lot of talking and a lot of laughing. And when I was about 17, Sandra taught me how to inhale with smoking, and that was years ago. Nobody thought there was anything wrong with it. I wanted to learn to inhale. Everybody was smoking from 14 to 15, and here I was 17. I wasn't smoking yet. And she taught me, and I remember when she said to me, all right, you'll do this, you'll do that. We worked on it for a few hours, and then finally, I said, I got it. I can inhale. And I was so excited. Can you imagine? Oh.
Was that a one-time experience?
A one-time experience. I learned, only the learning was one time, but I smoked for 14 years, and then I stopped. I thought, I'm okay.
Yes. No, you said you grew up in the Borough Park neighborhood of Brooklyn.
Always Borough Park. So we lived on 46th Street, and then we moved to 48th Street. 48th Street was where my parents... actually, on 46th, we rented an apartment. Then my father bought a house on 46th Street. We lived there for several years. Then we moved to 48th. We bought a different house, and we lived on 48th between 17th and 18th for many years. And then I got married from there. When I got married, I took an apartment a block away from my mother and father. And I lived there for about, 3 years or so. And then we bought this house on East 28th Street, where I have lived now until I had my 2 children here. And I've lived here since then. We never moved.
Interesting. Now, let me just take you back to Borough Park a little bit. How have your experiences growing up in Borough Park affected your life?
I had a lot of friends, and that was important. So I always had friends. I knew how to be a friend and to make friends. I think it was a learned experience because I remember other kids who lived in other neighborhoods or in school or something that I met somewhere, and they didn't have that many friends. It was always an important part of my life. What else? I don't know. A lot of people stayed around. Rhoda still lived in the neighborhood when she got married. Vivian lived in the neighborhood when she got married. We were together there for a few years. And ultimately, they ended up moving away. But it felt in those early years, this you're going to like. We made blind dates for each other in those years when we were going out. 15, 16, 17, 18, as we got older. And I made a blind date for Rhoda. We were 17. We were graduating from high school that weekend, and I made a blind date for her, and she ended up marrying him. But the funny thing is, I was staying over at her house that weekend. We did things like that. I was staying over at her house, and the dates were coming. I had gone to a party, met somebody, and he was bringing a friend for her. And he came in, and I introduced them, my date, hello, and her date, made the introduction. And then she and I went to get our coats, and I said, how do you like him? She says, I'm crazy about him. And they got married, and he's in his 80s already, and he just passed away this year in May. But they had 5 children, and they lived their life together. That was one. Sandra, I told them they would have been old maids if it wasn't for me. That's what they called it years ago.
Yes.
My husband and I went to visit a friend, and there was another couple there. It was a guy with a blind date. He had come to visit the people whose house it was. And I looked at him, and I grabbed the girl whose house it was, and took her into the kitchen, and I said, I have a girl for him. So she said, okay, this is just a blind date, it doesn't matter. I said, here's her phone number. She said, don't you have to ask her? I said, no, I don't have to ask her. You take this, you give it to him. His life is going to be changed. 2 weeks later, they were engaged.
Oh my gosh,
they got married, and they had 2 children, and they lived in New Jersey. Unfortunately, he died he was a good friend. He died several years ago, about 20 years ago. Sad. Okay, that's 2. The third one, Sally, who had been a friend, also. I made her a blind date, and she ended up marrying. So 3 of them. The only one was Vivian, and Vivian's blind date was Sally's husband's friend. So in some way,
connected.
I used to say to them, we used to tease them, you're lucky you know me.
Yeah, I know, that's the term they called an unmarried woman, an old maid. That was the term they used.
An old maid.
Yes.
These were, I'm telling you, the things that I considered fun things. The neighborhood, we used to go to 13th Avenue, my friends and I, we would, like on a Saturday, even though Borough Park was a religious neighborhood, there were plenty of people who weren't. We would go to 13th Avenue, it was a big shopping area, and we would go into shoe stores, and we would go into clothing stores. And then as we got older, on Friday nights, we used to go to Garfield's or Dubrow's. They were diners, and that's where you sit and you sort of met people. It was boy meets girl.
Oh.
We didn't really go to dances and things like that. We would go to Garfield's and we would meet. We would go to the country and meet people. There were hotels in the country that we met people in those years. But in Borough Park itself, a lot of people, a lot of friends.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And we all, Vivian, Rhoda, and I went to Brooklyn College together. Sandra moved to New Jersey. so she didn't go to college with us, but we still kept up. This was what life was like. It was a happy time. We were happy, we were friends, we did things together. It was good. And then it continued till we got married. Our husbands became friends, and the whole thing stayed together. Kids didn't. The children, by the time we had children, it was different. Children were, they would see each other and know each other, but it wasn't the closeness that we had.
You guys had that bond.
Oh, yes, very much. I knew everything about each other's family.
That's really, really fantastic. Now, you mentioned Borough Park was religious, so I know there were many Jewish families.
Yes.
Were there other families as well?
Yes, my family was Jewish, but it wasn't religious. Rhoda's family was more religious. She would, pull away somewhat. And then she married somebody who wasn't religious, and she didn't continue. Vivian, not at all. I think I saw my first ham sandwich in Vivian's house. I had never seen ham in my life because my mother kept a kosher home. Her mother had been more religious.
Oh, so your mother kept a kosher
My
home?
mother kept a kosher home, but we ate Chinese food on Sunday.
Oh.
In our thinking,
Uh-huh.
that was okay. Now I know there are many. I have people, clients, friends who are very Orthodox now. They don't do anything like that. We didn't consider ourselves very Orthodox. We were just Jewish people. We went to the temple on holidays. I went to Sunday school at Temple Emmanuel. That wasn't Orthodox. That was conservative, something like that. There were a lot of temples. But Borough Park wasn't that religious. There were religious people compared to other areas, but it became, and the real estate went very high. And a lot of things, now it's, high-priced area.
Yes, it's changed. It certainly has changed. Can you tell me, in your opinion, how the neighborhood has changed for the better or the worse? We can talk about this neighborhood.
This neighborhood.
Because you've been here for like 55 years.
Right. Not bad, considering how the change was when I moved here. I was pregnant with my son. And when he was a little boy growing up, he had a lot of friends on the block. The neighborhood, my block was almost entirely Jewish. Christmas time, if you saw one wreath, it was a lot. You saw Hanukkah candles. They were, it was very, very Jewish all around. Now, at this point, I still live in the same house. My block is Russian. My block is Asian, and I don't know if maybe all right, I'll give it a lot, I'll say 3 or 4 of the old neighbors are there. Kids grew up there and then went on their way. The parents, a lot of people died over the years. We were the young ones when we came. The neighborhood was already, 10 years old, something like that. I was the second tenant, well, no, I was an owner, but the second one of the house that I lived in. And I don't know, the neighborhood, it's like, but from East 26th Street to Nostrand Avenue here, all these little brick houses, that's the area. It's a little larger. It goes out to Avenue V and it goes down to Avenue Y or Z. And that area has, stayed very nice, but you don't see many children. Nobody plays outside on the street. Right now, no matter when I walk out, nobody's outside. Maybe one person, maybe people will walk dogs. Otherwise, you don't see. You see no kids. You don't see people. You don't see neighbors talking. Oh, we used to stand outside with baby carriages, and we used to stand. The kids were playing ball in the street. There were always children. None of that now. I don't know, the Russian people must have come here when their children were older.
So there are no little kids in the community?
Very little, very little. We're in my immediate.
Now, you've been here for 55 years. How has Nostrand Avenue changed? Now there are many stores.
Oh, different stores.
Okay.
Everything wasn't food stores. You know, it's like a better neighborhood when there's clothing stores. They had kiddie clothes, and they had a couple of more appliances. There's a nice appliance store. They had bakeries. Oh, bakeries were so important. There was a bakery in the little mall here on Avenue Z, Schlucker's. It was wonderful. Butterbun was one of the most well-known bakeries in the neighborhood on Nostrand Avenue between W and X.
What was it called? Butterbun?
Butterbun. And then there may have been one or two other bakeries. There was a Key Food where the Russian store is. There was Waldbaum's was the supermarket. When Waldbaum's moved out, for a while Pathmark was there, and now Aldi's is there. But I don't see that much action. There's Stop and Shop came to 18th Avenue, but you would walk out and you'd have a place to go. Well, the Russian store now has like a buffet of food and prepared meals. There were no prepared meals then. There were 3 kosher butchers. There's one down around Avenue V. There were 3 kosher butchers between Avenue X and Avenue Y.
What about diners? Because I see Perry's is still up the street.
Okay. Perry's was maybe the fifth business in that same spot, and they all failed before Perry. And when Perry's first came in, I had just gone into business. There was on Nostrand Avenue, there was some type of, I would say, nutrition was one of the things. It was a medical building, and I had walked in. I worked as a nutritionist. I worked in the city, and I worked in Great Neck, and I saw this new place, and I stopped in, and I filled out a form, an application of sorts. Not that they were looking for anybody, but when the owner of the facility, the man who he arranged to have a podiatrist, an internist, a gynecologist, a hypnotist. He wanted a very varied type of facility, and I was a nutritionist, and he said to me, he liked me, and he said to me, I'm putting you in business. I said, really? He says, won't cost you any money. Once you're settled and you're making money, then I'll take rent, etc. from you. And that's what he did. He got me started, and I had 25 very nice years. But unfortunately, when they had to build, when Waldbaum's left, and before Pathmark or anybody else came in, the whole shopping center was changed. He had to move out. When he moved out, I moved to Kings Highway and had a business on Kings Highway, which was very interesting for about another 10 years. And then I had to leave there because the landlord wanted the facility, and I moved. I had an office on Avenue P. So I had different times, but the original was this guy said.
What kind of business was it?
Nutrition. I would come in, and I would have people coming in. I used to do large classes, and they would, like a Weight Watcher, but not. Weight Watchers was all over the country, and it had a tremendous reputation. But I think that me telling you, a Weight Watcher, you get the concept. People came for classes, and then people came privately. Weight Watchers didn't have private. And at some point, I stopped doing the classes, and I continued with the private. And I had some very big people who became much smaller while they were coming to me.
So do you still do the business?
Yes, I still work, and in fact, I have a family. The father lost 85 pounds, the mother lost 75 pounds, and the son lost 80 pounds, and all 3. And whoever sees them ends up coming to me.
Oh, that's
it's
great.
Wonderful
Great advertisement. Yes. Well, at least you enjoy what
Yes.
you're doing,
Oh,
and that's
yes.
wonderful.
I do. Well, I did other things. I did recipe development for the Atkins program in the city years ago. I did nutrition communication. I worked for a large company, and I spoke to people all over the country on a hotline. I mean, imagine if you're talking to somebody from Alaska and you don't know the answer to the question. Hold on, I'll go look it up. No, I had to. So I honed my skills there. I did that, and then I was ready to go into business when I did, but I would never have thought of it if he didn't give me the opportunity. And it's made a very big difference in my life.
Of course, because I mean, just imagine somebody giving you a start and telling you, don't pay me anything until you really start to make it in the business. You don't really get people telling you that.
Nobody tells you
Yes.
that. And who doesn't pay rent, who doesn't do anything. He used to send me to places so that I could be an advertisement. He said, get yourself all dressed up and go into a beauty parlor. 10 women will see you, and they'll want to come in.
So you were a walking advertisement.
That was what
Yeah,
what it was.
and it worked. So,
Well, that was very personal to me. The area, though, at that time, interesting, you'll be interested in this. I did not have that religious a clientele. I had a few religious people. I had all kinds of people. I had a potpourri of different people. Came from Gerritsen Beach. A couple came from the project. I had different people who came to me. Then when I went to Kings Highway, I got a whole new group of people because a half a mile was like far to travel. So the new people were the Syrians on Ocean Parkway. They became my clientele. Syrian Jewish people, but different than the Orthodox. Then in my next place, it was all Orthodox. All Orthodox, one after another. Now I'm starting to get some that aren't Orthodox. I have a lot of nurses from Maimonides Hospital. One lost a lot of weight, and now they come to me. And that's Borough Park, going back to my old neighborhood. But they come to me, so it's...
that's interesting. It's like
Yes.
full circle. Back to the Borough Park
Yes.
neighborhood.
Yes.
So in your opinion, has the neighborhood changed for the better or the worse?
Well, I can't say it's changed for the better because we had very happy, fun-filled years. I don't have I love the friends, and I really don't have them here anymore. The people I was friendly with moved away. In fact, last year somebody moved out to Jersey. She was the last one. She moved to one of those 55 and older places, and she said, I feel like I'm leaving you alone. But it's different times. Has it changed? Not for the better. Not bad, but not for the better. It was more cohesive. And we used to go to Martin's. I told you about Perry. Perry came. Martin's was a restaurant on Avenue W in Nostrand, and Seniors. Somebody must have told you. Nobody tell you about Seniors on Nostrand Avenue and Avenue Y.
So that's another restaurant?
Another restaurant that was very popular, sort of where Radio Shack is. Very popular. And Martin's was right here on, yes. Those were popular. People went there. And there were a couple of local Chinese places that were very popular on Avenue U. Avenue U was always good. Every store was always filled on Avenue U. It was very active. Then sometimes on Nostrand there would be people, with empty stores. But it seems pretty rented now.
Now you mentioned when you were little, you guys, your family ate Chinese food every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
So I have to ask you, do you still enjoy eating Chinese food?
Yes, but my husband, as he was never a Chinese food either. He came from a more religious kind of family, and he has the temple that's across the street from where I live. There's a temple on East 28th Street, and Avenue X, and he goes to that temple, and his mind is more on that than it is on Chinese food. So I'll grab an egg roll sometimes as I'm walking in the street.
What makes Brooklyn so special? Because you have been born in Brooklyn in the Borough Park area, and then you have lived in this neighborhood for like 55 years.
Yes.
So what in your mind makes Brooklyn special?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Let me think about it. It's mine. It's mine. I'm from Brooklyn. I never lived anywhere. Well, I mean, I went to Florida. I have a condo in Florida. We go on vacation, but that doesn't feel like this. I belong here. And even though the neighborhood has changed and my original friends aren't here, this library, I'm coming here for 55 years. This library, Kingsbury was new. That was one of the nicer things when I was coming here. My brother said to me, he was a kid, my brother, he was young, he said, oh, yeah, the library is so close to you. I said, isn't that wonderful? I remember once saying to my son, people were running to places to do a paper. He had some paper. I never bothered much with him. He did his own homework, and he was very bright in school. But this one thing, he said, I need more than I have myself. I said, come with me. And we came here, and I took out all the books and everything that, I said, you'll do a fabulous paper here. I said I went through college doing my papers here, and I didn't go to the Brooklyn College Library.
Oh, you use Kingsville Library instead of Brooklyn College Library?
I was always, it's always, this library was wonderful, always.
That's really great to hear. That the library has played such an important role in your life from
important.
childhood all the way
My children always, let's go to the library. I would come with the two of them, and we would come in here.
So you said you had a son, and what's
a son and a daughter.
A daughter.
Daughter is younger, son is older. Daughter live here now. My daughter lives in Scarsdale, which is Westchester, and my son lives in Manhattan. They each have 2 children home.
So I like that you said that with Brooklyn, you like Brooklyn because it just feels right. You belong here.
Right.
Some of the things about this neighborhood that makes it a great place to live.
I guess it depends on what people want. A lot of people moved away. What makes it great?
What made you stay?
Well, one of the sad things in my life is that they just took Lomans away. I was very happy having Lomans here. When they put Lomans here, it was a highlight in my life. Very exciting.
And Lomans is what?
Lomans is a women's department store that used to be somewhere in all the way down Bedford Avenue.
Or by Emmons Avenue.
That's the new one.
Yes.
That's the one that came
one.
here. It was originally, it was all the way down. They had like 3 different moves. Then there was one on Bedford Avenue, and there was one on Beverly Road, and then they moved the Brooklyn Lomans to Bedford Avenue. Not Bedford, to Emmons. Yes.
Now they're closed.
Yes. Feel bad about that. I don't know what made it. The thing that I keep thinking about, I mean, there was a time where we talked about moving to the islands. It just never happened. My husband didn't really want to travel that much. My son had a wonderful childhood here. He speaks very well about it. He had a lot of friends. My daughter, it wasn't as good for her, but it was okay, and they're good children. They turned out fine. Their friends were nice. They had good friends. I had nice friends here. Besides my original friends, I had nice. I don't know what the library, the stores. They were somehow good things happened. I didn't have, thank God, too many bad experiences. It depends on people's experiences, I guess. I still see, because I'm living here so many years, I see familiar people. I'll walk down the street and I'll see someone who'll say to me, okay, I never gained the weight back.
This is one of your clients.
Right, it would be something like that.
So, what message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview?
I would say the library has always been very important to me. If you can love a place, I would say I love the library. I still come in, you see me all the time, just to hang out because I like it. I like the way it smells, I like the way it feels. And I have to tell you this, people like yourself are nicer now than I remember years ago. There's much more attention. I talk to you, I talk to Ratner, I talk to a few of the other people here. It's good. Everything comes easy. If I say I want to reserve something, everybody runs and does it. You got me the magazines that day. Things are good. I do. I feel this is wonderful. I feel the neighborhood was always a healthy place. I hope it stays. It's good. I have good feelings. I don't have any sadness. I lived in Borough Park. It was okay. I came here. It was fine. Basically a happy person, if people let me be.
Now there's Coney Island. Did you go to Coney Island years ago?
Oh, Coney Island, I loved it. When I lived in Borough Park, that wasn't here. Here, we went just a few, spot going. Occasionally we'd go. My husband wasn't a beach person. We went to the mountains a couple of summers. And then maybe I would go during the week with them, but he wasn't much of a beach person. He didn't really like the beach. I loved it with my mother and my father and my sister and my brother, and we used to go to the beach. In fact, before my brother was born, my brother's much younger, we would go to the beach with my parents, and it was wonderful. My father was a good swimmer. We would swim, and the waves, I can remember it. Oh, it felt wonderful, the cold waves, and it smelled so good. And the men used to come by selling knishes, potato knishes. They were wonderful. And Nathan's was there.
Oh, so you guys ate Nathan's?
Ate Nathan's, yes. My mother would bring sandwiches, and then we would eat Nathan's. We would do both. Coney Island was wonderful. I went on the, what was it called? Not the parachute jump, the cyclone. Oh, I went on the cyclone, and Rhoda and I went on that date, that not the Sunday night where I introduced her future husband, but on Friday night we had another blind date. I'm telling you, I was the provider, and so I had my date, and he brought a friend, and we went on the cyclone. On the cyclone, I couldn't believe it. It was I couldn't believe that I had done that. And then about 2 or 3 years later, I went on the cyclone again with my friend Sandra, also made her a date, and we went.
Well, you matched a couple of your friends. Did you ever consider being a matchmaker? Because you did such a fantastic job.
I used to say that. Well, what I always said was the same thing. It'd all be old maids if it wasn't for me. That was my standard phrase.
But you seem to have a skill, because it's interesting how you were able to look at somebody and say, you know what, they can connect.
Put them together.
Yeah.
Yes, and it worked. It worked. Yeah. I would have, maybe I should start doing that. Have another career. I'm trying. Coney Island was wonderful. We went to the city. We took the train when I was young. I'm afraid to go now. And I would go.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and you were a child then?
No, when I was single. Young girls, we ate in the automat. Oh, that was little food that was like a cafeteria, and you took it out of, they had piled one on top of another, and you put money in, and the food came out. And that was very popular then.
And this was where, in the city?
This is when in the city, like when I was 15, 16, we would go into Manhattan. And that was fun. And that was fun. We would go to museums. I remember going to museums with pads and art pencils and sitting in a museum with somebody, whoever the friend was. Maybe it was somebody from school who was interested in that. It was a period of time where I was interested in that. And we would draw. I used to like to draw. So things like that. I remember museums. I remember, the skating rink at Park Circle. I remember when I was about 15, we went out on dates.
And Park Circle is Manhattan?
No, Park Circle is Brooklyn,
Oh,
where
Brooklyn.
Prospect Park begins. It's at the end of Coney Island Avenue is Park Circle. And we used to go there, and it was a skating rink, a roller skating rink. And we used to go there to meet boys. That was very important years ago. I don't think people do. Well, today they have Jade and Match.com. We didn't have that. We went places. We had to find people.
Or have friends who can match them.
Have friends, right, blind dates.
Yeah.
Right. It was good, though. I have good feelings. I don't know if everybody does, but thank God I was healthy. My parents were healthy. My parents were young. We used to go places. We would, with the family, we would see shows occasionally. We would go, again, Chinese food. We weren't eating Chinese food, so we were eating something else. We were going out to the city. We did go to the city because my mother took us shopping in the city. Shopping was either downtown Brooklyn or the city. The city was cheaper stores, all back at Klein's, and Brooklyn was Mays and A&S's. A&S was famous.
Those were the famous stores I've heard about, Mays and A&S.
A&S was classy. Mays was cheaper. There was Mays, there was Goodwin's. Those were the cheapest stores. And A&S was a good store. And then in the city, there was Best and Company was a good store.
What is that?
BEST and Company. That was considered a good store. Orbach's was a nice store. There was a Klein's. Klein's was the cheapest store, but it was very popular. All of these places that we used to go shop, constantly shopping. My mother liked to shop. My sister and I liked to shop. We still do. I like to shop. I like to touch merchandise.
So you don't go for online shopping?
I never did that. Never. I know my daughter does it, but I don't do it. But I like it, what I'm doing. I want to see it and touch it and feel it.
Try it on.
Try it on, that too. Yes, I do. I like that. And even if I'm not buying, I like it. I'm excited now. There's some nice new stores. Brooklyn was missing that. When my friends in New Jersey and my friends out on the island had, so many department stores we never had. Kings Plaza was the one and only mall that we ever had. I remember when they opened up Kings Plaza, it was wonderful.
How was that like?
Oh, that was so exciting. We never had anything like it. It was a mall like they had out on the island. Loved it. For a while. Big deal now, I'm remembering. An express bus that's on this corner, East 28th Street and Avenue X, my corner, an express bus that goes to Manhattan. I don't have to use the train. This is easier.
Oh, so you use the express bus?
The express bus. Money well spent. I like that express bus. I've been using that express bus. I still use it. I've been using that. I don't, even when I drove more, I would go into the city sometimes using the car. It didn't bother me, but the whole thing was not, I'm not that kind of a driver who wants to be in the city. I wanted to sit down on an express bus and be safe. And that was how it is. The express bus is $7.50 now, each way. I don't remember what it was when it started, but it was nothing like that. I remember the subway was very little.
Little? A quarter?
I don't know, a quarter or half. I don't remember. There was a token. I don't remember how much the token was. But I did, in my early years, I took the train. I stopped using the train some years after that.
But Well, this has really been fascinating, but before I close, I want to ask you, Kay, is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview? And if so, what?
I don't know.
Anything again that you know?
Lead me and I will
Well,
pick it up.
I guess in terms of a wonderful childhood memory or at college or anything, a restaurant, any places of interest in Brooklyn, anything.
You mean places?
Places or people, anything. Because you've really done a fantastic job. Yes.
I would, to recommend, Lundy's was
Lundy's.
a great,
What
Lundy's.
was Lundy's?
It was seafood, and they came from all over to go to Lundy's. People came from New Jersey, people came from Connecticut, people came from all over. They had the most fantastic seafood. They had a clam bar, and they had a chowder, and they had wonderful, but of course this was not anything with the Borough Park crowd, because they were religious. That's not kosher. But for people, the average person, it was
And
wonderful.
Lundy's was located where? Where was Lundy's located?
Ocean Avenue, and the building, I think they made something. You know where there's, right off the Emmons Avenue.
Oh, Emmons Avenue in Brooklyn.
They had a lobster salad that was, they took the whole lobster and they took the lobster out and they served it in a bowl. Plain lobster. You didn't have to break, you didn't have to wear a bib, you didn't have to, oh, that was heavenly. What other places? There were always a lot of Italian places around, a couple of good ones. There's one in Sheepshead Bay with an R, I forgot the name. I'm trying to remember. There's one on the corner. Do you ever eat there?
No.
But there's Randazzo's. I think Randazzo. There are a few. In fact, years ago they used to have a place where showed talent from movies and from Broadway. They had a talent place, and the people came there to try out for plays and for theater and for movies. It was more important than it is now. A lot of people like the fishing part. That didn't matter to me. I never went fishing. My husband took my son once or twice, but it didn't matter to me. Oh, something else. My husband went to a My Turn program at Kingsborough, and he liked that when he first retired. That was good. To me, as I'm talking about it, it's like I'm remembering so many different things. I mean, most of it very good.
Well, it's certainly been a fascinating life that you've experienced with your friends and that camaraderie.
Yes, that's.
So I think that's really, really wonderful. For people listening today, it's really good to maintain that friendship.
We're like we were, and we become young when we're with each other, because we remember it. We once took a trip to a high school graduation trip to Washington, D.C., and we laughed the whole trip. Laughing, a lot of laughing, a lot of talking, a lot of, just great friendliness with each other, and we continued as the years went by. I'm going to do what you said, though.
All right. So once again, Kay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For
I
coming in.
enjoyed
I
it.
really enjoyed it, and I want to thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to be interviewed for this project, Our Streets, Our Stories. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you.